Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us on the program today. I am Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up. Israel Security Cabinet approves plan to expand military offensive against Hamas in Gaza. All across Europe, thousands celebrate VE Day. Plus, U.S. President Donald Trump announced his intention to hit films made in foreign countries with 100% tariffs. Let's begin the world today. And we're beginning in the Middle East as Israel's Security Cabinet approves a plan to expand its military offensive against Hamas, which includes the capture of Gaza and the holding of its territory. Israeli officials say the plan also includes moving the 2.1 million Palestinians in Gaza towards the south, which could worsen the humanitarian crisis. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called it a good plan because it would achieve the goals of defeating Hamas and returning its remaining hostages. The cabinet also approved in principle a plan to deliver and distribute humanitarian aid through private companies, which would end a 2-month blockade the UN says has caused severe food shortages. The UN and other aid agencies have said the proposal will be a breach of basic humanitarian principle and that they will not cooperate. Hamas says Israel's proposal amounts to political blackmail. A prominent Druze leader and head of the political office of the military council in Suwaida, Mazen al-Mutni, has described his organization as a shield for the region after a deal was signed with government officials in Damascus to hand over heavy weapons and ramp up the national security presence in the region. Speaking on Sunday, he said, if our weapons were not in the hands of our civil and popular forces, the Syrian people as a whole would not have accepted what is happening. These weapons today are the real defensive shield. We call on neighboring countries to understand and realize that our stand today in Suwaida province will reshape the region for the better, towards a more civilized and positive future. This requires support and assistance. Today we are a shield for the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan and in the future for the Gulf states. He also says they're calling for protection from all neighboring countries, including Israel. Publicly, he says they're asking for the protection of the people. No human being, he says, should be harmed, let alone when the community is under threat from ISIS. They're asking for protection from the international community as well and from the international coalition. Let's segue into the war in Ukraine, and Russian President Vladimir Putin says reconciliation between his country and Ukraine is inevitable. He was speaking on Pavel Subrina's documentary, Moscow, Kremlin, Putin, 25 Years. President Putin says it's a matter of time for the reconciliation to happen. He says when we signed the Minsk agreements in 2014 and 2015, we still expected they would be honored. But as it has turned out, we were simply fooled. They simply used the Minsk agreements as an excuse to take a break to rearm Ukraine and prepare it for a new war with Russia. Back in 2022, both former German Chancellor Angela Merkel and former French President François Hollande admitted that they had signed the Minsk agreements to buy Kyiv time, with the leaders saying that they never thought it would be a permanent ceasefire. Moscow launched a military offensive in Ukraine in late February 2022 after recognizing the independence of Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic, claiming that Kyiv had failed to guarantee their special status under those Minsk agreements and urging Ukraine to declare itself officially neutral and give assurances it would never join NATO. Kyiv denounced the Russian action as an invasion. Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, imposed martial law throughout the country, announcing a general mobilization, while the EU and the US imposed several rounds of sanctions on Moscow. But today is Victory in Europe Day, better known as VE Day across Europe. It marks the end of the Second World War in Europe on May 8, 1945, when the Allies accepted the surrender of Nazi Germany. 4 days of celebrations, which have been organized by the government, began on Monday, May 5, and will run until May 8th on Thursday. Our street parties have been held across the UK, including at Buckingham Palace and in Downing Street. The royal family watched the red arrows fly over the palace, with the King and Queen waving to thousands of people who gathered at the mall. The Prince and Princess of Wales and their 3 children also joined the march. The monarch. While all these events have been ongoing, the royal family have also been hosting their own tea party at Buckingham Palace. Around 50 veterans, their families, and other members of the wartime generation have been invited along. There have been long tables set up outside of number 10 Downing Street, with Victoria sponge cake, Scotch eggs, and pork pies on the menu for guests. Now, as is tradition, bunting has been hung out, and each seat has been given a commemorative plate and mug with the words VE Day 80 written on them. Spotted among the guests so far is comedian Al Murray and Second World War veterans, all expected to be in attendance. On Sunday, however, thousands of people marched through Amsterdam in a solemn World War II remembrance march, honoring victims of Nazi occupation and reaffirming a national call for peace and unity. Participants drummed and marched under police escort, gathering at monuments and squares, listening to speeches and observing moments of silence besides signs reading "Never Again" means never again for anyone. According to reports, Mayor Famke Halsema led the march, joined by King Willem Alexander, Queen Maxima, and Prime Minister Dick Schoof, as around 16,000 people walked from Museum Square to Dam Square on the National Day of Remembrance. Held each May since 1945, the National Day of Remembrance is one of the most significant commemorative events in the Netherlands, drawing thousands to honor World War II victims and to reflect on the past.
Onze vrijheid. We herdenken de slachtoffers van de Holocaust. De 100.
Over in the United States, U.S. President Donald Trump says he's directing his government to reopen and expand Alcatraz, the infamous former prison on an island near San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. In a message on his Truth Social site on Sunday, the U.S. president said that for too long, America has been plagued by vicious, violent, and repeat criminal offenders. The reopening of Alcatraz, once notorious as one of the U.S.'s toughest prisons, would serve as a symbol of law, order, and justice. Leading Democrats said the proposal was not a serious one. The maximum security facility, also known as the Rock, was closed in 1963 and is currently operating as a successful tourist site.
Just an idea I've had, and I guess because the judges, so many of these radicalized judges, they want to have trials for every single, think of it, every single person that's in our country illegally, that came in illegally, that would mean millions of trials, and it's just so ridiculous what's happening. And it's long been a symbol, Alcatraz, of whatever it is. I mean, it's a sad symbol, but it's a symbol of law and order. And, it's got quite a history, frankly. Yeah. So I think we're going to do that, and we're looking at it right now. Movie tariffs, what they've done is other nations have been stealing the movie-making capabilities from the United States. And I said to a couple of people, what do you think? I've done some very strong research over the last week, and we're making very few movies now. Hollywood is being destroyed. Now, you have an grossly incompetent governor that allowed that to happen, so I'm not just blaming other nations, but other nations, a lot of them, have stolen our movie industry. And I'm saying, if they're not willing to make a movie inside the United States, then we should have a tariff on movies that come in. And not only that, governments are actually giving big money. I mean, they're supporting them financially.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump said on Sunday he and his advisors have had some good discussions about Russia and Ukraine in recent days without giving further details. This announcement from President Trump comes just days after the agreement between the U.S. and Ukraine. Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird has more.
The United States and Ukraine have struck a deal for the U.S. to establish a United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. This deal is believed to have major impact on the potential end to the Ukraine and Russia war.
A historic agreement to establish the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. This is a first-of-its-kind economic partnership for the reconstruction and long-term economic success of Ukraine that the United States will greatly benefit from. This partnership represents the United States taking an economic stake in securing a free, peaceful, and sovereign future for Ukraine. This partnership establishes a fund that will receive 50% of royalties, license fees, and other similar payments from natural resource projects in Ukraine. President Trump has been clear from the beginning. He wants the killing in this brutal war to end. This agreement shows how invested the president is in securing a truly lasting peace.
President Donald Trump believes that this deal will expand the U.S.'s access to natural resources while ensuring that the U.S. provides reconstruction support to Ukraine.
So I said, well, we want something for our efforts beyond what you would think would be acceptable. And we said rare earth. They have very good rare earth. As you know, we're looking for rare earth all the time. Rare earth is called rare for a reason.
The United States has been a partner to Ukraine since the Biden administration, serving as a leading ally in providing financial and military artillery support. Americans are watching to see if this diplomatic agreement could be a real step toward the end of the war between Ukraine and Russia. From Washington, Maria Bird, Channels Television News.
Well, here's Maria now joining us to discuss more on this. Maria, great to see you. During the president's chats with journalists outside of the chopper just before, on his arrival from Florida, did he at least mention the scope of the deal and how it will work?
Good to see you as well. Yes, the scope of the deal, as you mentioned, it was a very brief conversation that he had. I think that this is something that he has been hoping would be part of his legacy and his administration, was to be an intricate part in the ending of the war with Russia and Ukraine. And as we can see, there's a much bigger picture to this. There is benefit to the United States as we've discussed this agreement and looking at what the agreement really entails. It's really talking about the U.S. having access to rare minerals, as he said. We know there has been trade war challenges between the U.S. and China for quite some time now, specifically most recently, which is going to impact the chips that are needed for electronic devices and also much of the minerals that are needed to develop some of the military artillery and some of the defense mechanisms that are used within defending the U.S. And obviously now we are providing support to Ukraine as well with military supplies. And so those are some of the key components to how the U.S. is going to benefit, is having access to those minerals, having access to oil. Those are some very key areas for us. We know the U.S. has had a short shortage and availability of natural resources. So having that type of access and then being able to supply defense mechanisms, whether it's financial assistance or actually providing those military, whether it's vehicles, whether it's other types of artillery, for Ukraine to continue to defend itself throughout the war, which obviously speaks heavily to the American base that was in support of Ukraine throughout this war.
So yeah, there is, a lot of conversation around the deal being signed, but not really about when it kicks off for both
Mhm.
sides.
And that I think is where many Americans are now. The conversations are around when will this begin? Obviously, we have not yet officially discontinued support to Ukraine, and so I think that will continue. And obviously, that's going to be part of the beginning of it. We can be assured that advisors are talking with Ukrainian government officials regarding access to these very rare minerals. So we will probably see in the next few weeks a clear understanding of the path forward. But I think the most imminent thing is that you will probably not see an end to the support, and there could be additional financial support that we see here coming very soon.
Maria, that deal was signed in Washington last Wednesday. Has anyone in the Trump administration at least tried to flesh up what the president has said?
I don't think they've necessarily tried. I think that their first piece is going to really the focus is going to be on those rare minerals. And obviously, we know that we are trying to increase the amount of manufacturing here in the United States, but it's probably not going to be a clear plan provided. What we're probably going to really see is we're going to hear of the U.S. has gone over and looked at space or looked at minerals and wants to find ways to extract that and bring it back to the U.S. And then you're going to probably hear an announcement about the type of aid. I'm sure President Zelensky is going to be calling President Trump very soon for additional aid and support. But I think the focus now for the president's administration is finding ways to work with Russia and other allies in Europe to be able to find a way to put some sort of an end date to the war.
Now, I guess that this deal is a first win for the Trump administration, having marked 100 days. I almost said 100 years, but it's 100 days since Donald Trump took over office as U.S. president. What do Americans make of the deal? What do Americans make of the fact that the deal has been signed, at least?
Well, I think that Americans are trying to figure out what this really means. I think you have two parties that in some way are getting something out of it. Democrats have been strong supporters from a humanitarian perspective and defense perspective for Ukraine. And you have Republicans that are looking for ways to boost up the U.S. economy, and specifically around manufacturing and bringing things back into the U.S. so that the U.S. is not so heavily dependent overseas. And I think that is these two areas that are being that are moving forward and looking to satisfy both of those perspectives. But if the agreement has been signed, I think they're going to be looking for some clear actions, which very likely we will see some clear actions over the next couple of weeks without having a clear plan. I think you'll probably have some sort of executive order or some announcement about financial support, defense support, or minerals that have been identified that the U.S. plans to extract from Ukraine.
And there have been many moving parts since this administration took over. I mean, every day there's been either an executive order or some changes, to institutions. What do Americans say about, and what does the Trump administration, more importantly, think, have been its achievements so far?
Well, as you said, the first 100 days, there have been a list of things that have been identified. We know, as you said, the executive orders, there was a list coming in the door. At Inauguration Day, he was signing executive orders right there on the spot. I think the areas that Americans are looking at are the borders. We obviously have two varied approaches to that. One side of the American people are very excited that the borders have been what the Trump administration considered secured, and that they have stopped illegal entry into the United States, and also that people are being deported back. And there's other Americans that are very much concerned. There are obviously a lot of legal cases currently underway about individuals that have been deported back to their countries, when they say without the appropriate protocols being put in place, and that individuals who were actually legally here in the United States. So I think those are one of the areas that was a clear campaign agenda item that the Trump administration would say was accomplished. Obviously, there's other areas as relates to the economy. Even though we still have an economic struggle happening, the tariffs is an area that he would say is a win. He would say that America has been being bled for some time, and that he is putting an end to that, and that he is hoping that the U.S. is going to be able to receive those tariffs, which he has stated time and time again will bring lots of income to the United States, and we will see the U.S. being able to build up its economic base through those tariffs. So those are some very key components, and we know that he has drastically cut down the federal government workforce. That was one of the pieces that he came to the door, is to try to push against bureaucracy, push against some of the very large government structure, which is his implementation of Dodge. And so that would be another area that he would claim as a victory for the Trump administration. But we know that, as most presidents go through a period where the public sentiment is not quite in alignment with what they came in the door and what they were voted, what their popularity was at voting. And so he has seen some decreases in that as well. But these are areas that he said he was going to do, and that probably his base is looking for support. But Americans are still looking to see how their pockets can be addressed, because they're still feeling some major crunches with inflation, and obviously with just wages and jobs in the United States as well.
Yeah, indeed. And just last week, we thought we'd seen the first casualty of the Trump administration, but they saved face by announcing a new assignment for National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Has there been any more information about, where he's going, whether he really is out of the administration now, and, when Senate can confirm that he is ambassador to the United Nations?
Well, they're saying that his appointment to United Nations will happen in the next couple of weeks, and they're saying that the president is very serious and will be doing that and moving forward in that direction. And so that will probably be a couple weeks from now. As far as what will happen next, we know that the Secretary of State is now serving in that interim role for national security. We know national security is a major concern for the president, and there have been some names speculating as to who he will name in that position. But he has also stated that it potentially could be 6 months before there is another national security advisor. So I think at this time, as you said, it will really be probably the most eminent piece will be within the next couple of weeks, seeing Waltz assigned to the United Nations.
Maria, thanks again for going down this rabbit hole with us. Our eyes still on the Trump administration. Thanks again. We're off on our first break now on the program. When we come back, Rwanda confirms it's holding talks with the U.S. to accept migrants deported by the American government. Stay with us. Welcome back. Former presidential candidate and international developmental analyst Dr. Adisho Fabinon has called on the Nigerian government and African leaders to draw lessons from the ongoing war in Ukraine. Speaking on our Foreign Affairs program, Diplomatic Channel, Dr. Fabinon described Nigeria as a peculiar country with rich resources. He, however, warned against exploitative international deals.
I will appeal to Africans to get governance right. Representative governance. I don't want to. Democracy means different things to different people. Democracy that does not deliver on its dividends, it's not really for the people. And a number of countries, try all sorts of mechanisms. For Nigeria has so much untapped resources, a number of which is known by the rest of the world and unbeknownst to us. Fortunately, now there's quite a bit done in Nigeria to actually unearth and define Look, Nigeria has lithium, coltan, all those things that, I mean, without coltan, you don't have your, you don't have Tesla. You don't have your iPhones. Without tantalum, nubium, bitumen, all those things are in abundance in Nigeria, you know. So having untapped reserves is enough. Then there are regulatory and security situations, issues that potentially, I mean, look, we've known that for the past 20, 25, 30 years, you know, people have been taking out gold from Zamfara. The gold in Zamfara state is it's enough to build our own mini Fort Knox here. We have infrastructure gaps in Nigeria, just like Ukraine. What forced Ukraine to sign that agreement? They have the infrastructure gaps in terms of the ability to exploit. Ukraine is basically agriculture. I mean, they've done a lot of investment in agriculture. Truly, Ukraine is actually the food basket, the wheat basket of probably the entire world, you know. But when it comes to solid minerals, they have gaps. You know, Nigeria lacks downstream processing facilities critical for mineral exploitation, of which foreign partners are needed. And guess what? There are very people lining up. And then, of course, we have to be careful about exploitative deals. We don't want to sign deals when we are desperate. We want to sign deals when we are in a position of strength. Countries must avoid signing deals when they are desperate. It is at times like this, for example, that Nigeria should start considering what are the local value added it can do. Before you sign deals, if you have local value added, if you have made provision for transfer of technology, if your mineral, for example, exploitation of mineral, if you are linking it up to trade, ab initio. And why I'm saying all this is, you know, I'm a Nigerian. I love my country. But I can see, you know, where, and we must learn. We have to learn from other people's mistakes. If we get ourselves into unnecessary conflict or desperate situation, people will sign anything they will need to sign. And Nigeria is so peculiar because of our, what do you call it, heterogeneous, our diverse nature. You don't want a situation whereby one state will sign with one country, independent of a federal, you know, and then another state will say, because even if, for example, Nigeria's situation is very peculiar. If bandits, for one reason or the other, should capture a significant space of solid minerals and throw up the argument that they have been exploited and they have been, that they craft a narrative that shows some kind of oppression against them. And then they seek external support, contrary to what Nigeria is seeking. Guess what is, then there will be a conflict in Nigeria, almost akin to a civil war. And at that point in time, of all the minerals Nigeria has, Nigeria itself is not going to benefit more than 25% of everything. The rest of it will be paid to service those wars. So let us be mindful of the fact that we don't want to get into a situation where we are doing peace, where we are exchanging our resources simply because we want to keep internal peace. When we have an opportunity to keep internal peace or manage domestic conflict on our own, the long and short of what I'm trying to say is that negotiate from a position of strength. Let's learn from Ukraine. Ukraine was severely bombed before it got to where it is. And if it doesn't, if it had resolved some of this problem, had negotiated probably well, maybe it had made some concessions, who knows?
You can watch more of the interview with Dr. Shino Fagbero Byron on Diplomatic Channel when it airs later tonight at 8:30 in the UK on Sky 515 and later in the evening on the DSTV platform at 11:30. U.S. President Donald Trump says he'll hit films made in foreign countries with 100% tariffs as he ramps up trade disputes with nations around the world. The U.S. president said he was authorizing the Department of Commerce and Trade representative to start the process to impose the levy because American film industry was dying very fast. He blamed a concerted effort by other countries that offer incentives to attract filmmakers and studios, which he described as a national security threat. Filmmakers have for years left Hollywood for destinations including the UK and Canada to lower costs. One non-US union said the tariff plan would be a knockout blow to the international industry. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick responded to the announcement saying we're on it, but details are still unclear. Trump's statement did not say whether the tariff would apply to American production companies producing films abroad. We're still trying to make sense of it here in Nigeria, but let's talk to someone who might have an understanding somewhat of what the U.S. president is saying and how this impacts on the film industry in general. Joining us now is Nigerian filmmaker and animator Niyi Akimolayo, who joins us from his studio, I guess, here in Lagos. Niyi, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me, and good evening.
Good evening. We appreciate you spending time with us. We know you're really busy. As we can tell, you are somewhere where you're supposed to be editing films or directing or something. So we do appreciate this time with us. Now, I've had people asking me all morning what the U.S. President Donald Trump means. And I've read, the story over and over again. Maybe you can help us here. What do you think the U.S. President is trying to say?
Well, so if the concern is for Hollywood productions that are incentivized to actually make productions outside America because of some tax benefits or just some ease of work or even cheap labor, then it makes sense to understand that particular tariff in that sense. But it is not just films made outside America. I believe strongly from what I've read that it is for Hollywood productions, that companies registered in America, as Hollywood film studios would be trying to save costs by making films outside America. And even that isn't 100% clear. And you know how it has been with the Donald Trump's tariffs. Feels like he says one thing today and then he implies another thing tomorrow. So we can only wait and see what it really, really means.
Yeah, and I wondered as a filmmaker, who is even here in Nigeria, I'm sure you've also made some international movies that have been shown in America and all across the world. I mean, some of your movies are very famous. I won't go into mentioning any names, but anybody who knows your name already knows, that you are tied to some really interesting blockbusters and box office movies here in Nigeria. What implications do you think this will have on people like yourself and the industry here?
All right, so typically, I would say that the most common way we get our films shown in the US recently has been via streaming. That's Netflix and Amazon Prime Video, to be precise. And what usually has happened in the past is they would have what they call a worldwide license, called a WW license, and then they would have a US and Canada license. And this is because the US and Canada license is a bit different in terms of taxation. Is about 30-35% tax on the license deal, whereas all over the world it's a completely different thing. So we do not know if that impacts this because we make films first for the Nigerian market, predominantly for the Nigerian market, and then we try to appeal to an international audience. But usually in that discussion there is some tax calculation that is very specific to the United States. But I honestly do not think that is what this particular tariff issue with Trump is I think he's just very specific about, the key American studios that are now doing a lot of their productions outside America, which is, interesting because one of the things that we're thinking about here, even in Nigeria, with some of the initiatives that even I'm coming up with, like NollywoodFilmmaker.com, is to build a system of trust and reliability where Hollywood can actually come to film some of their major productions in places like Nigeria because there's capable hands and there is, good security and all the like. So that would be very disappointing if you now do not have those incentives, especially if we work really hard to prove that Nigeria is a place where foreign productions can happen.
Does it also mean, that these American studios cannot work with, or if they do work, perhaps with, their Nigerian counterparts, it means that they would have to budget more to make the movies or budget more to have the movies shown in the US?
So the question that no one has answered, even people in that space in the US is where exactly does the tariff come? Is it from the production budget or the sales, the gross of the movie? What happens if you make the film and it doesn't sell? What happens when you make a film that is targeted for festivals and it's not like, a commercial decision? So there's still a lot of things that aren't too clear. And I've read probably 5 different articles of people trying to break down what it might mean. It feels like a lot of it is still floating in the air. My thoughts would be that nothing much will change in terms of how much they need to spend if they are here or in any other parts of the world apart from America to make films, at least not in the immediate, because we do not know where the tariffs are going to be taken from. Typically, tariffs are taken ultimately from the consumers in a place like America, which now motivates people to, the producers to save costs and try and do more of their work in America. But of course, the reason why I do not even see a future in such a thing is that the world is becoming a global space. America is looking for stories to tell from all over the world. And that's why we've had, companies like Netflix and Amazon Prime work with us in Nigeria. So I do not even see this working on the, in the long run. So, but, we're open to see how that goes.
Yeah, so in other words, you can still sit back and relax and continue making your movies because they really won't be impacted by whatever, the U.S. administration does or tries to do to the movie industry, whether in Hollywood or elsewhere, right?
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Well, Nii, thank you so much for answering. Excuse me. Thank you so much for answering our questions this afternoon, and I'm sure you have brought some clarity to this. We understand it perfectly well. We can go on and continue streaming our movies and still enjoying this until the Trump administration provides more details about what the president has announced to be tariffs on Hollywood. Thanks again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Our French President Emmanuel Macron has been criticizing Europe's dependence on the US and China in science, technology, and space research during his speech at the Choose Europe for Science event at Sorbonne in Paris. He said that they sometimes fail because it's so comfortable to be hand in hand with the Americans. There is a strong conviction on the part of many Europeans they'll never be able to let go. And then it's like, this is not true. He says every time that we, I believe he's referring to Europe here, have dependencies, we create a vassalage. The French president was repeatedly insisting on a more autonomous course from its American ally for Europe. In his previous remarks, Macron also called for increased funding for EU defense and security. Rwanda is in the early stages of talks with the Trump administration to accept migrants deported by the U.S., according to its Foreign Affairs Minister, Olivier Nduhungirehe. His comments come after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said last month Washington is actively searching for countries that would take in some of the most despicable human beings. Well, the The Rwandan foreign minister said the talks were not new to Rwandans, as they had previously agreed to accept migrants deported by the UK. But the UK abandoned the scheme, which faced numerous legal challenges after Sir Keir Starmer's Labour government took office in July. Speaking to Rwandan TV on Sunday, he said the government is in the spirit of giving another chance to migrants who have problems across the world, adding that the talks with the US are continuing and it's too early to predict their outcome. Well, since assuming office in January, US President Donald Trump has focused on speeding up the removal of undocumented migrants with the promise of mass deportations. At least 10 people have died, 70 others hospitalized after strong winds caused full tourist boat to capsize in southwestern China. Sudden strong winds caused the boat to capsize in a river in Jiangxi City in Guangzhou on Sunday, leading 84 people to fall into the water. The death toll jumped from 9 after the body of one missing person was found early this morning. The incident happened as China celebrated the tail end of its week-long May Day holiday, a peak season for travel. Authorities in China have been told to step up public safety measures over peak tourist season. Sunday's incident comes 2 months after 11 people were killed in another accident when a passenger boat struck an industrial vessel in Yunnan province. Iran's foreign minister is urging India and Pakistan to exercise restraint as tensions between both countries continue to rise. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said this after arriving in Islamabad, the Pakistani capital, for a one-day visit. He says Iran is seeking de-escalation, adding that Iran is ready to mediate between New Delhi and Islamabad to defuse the tensions. The nuclear-armed rivals have been trading accusations over a deadly attack in disputed Kashmir. India has accused Pakistan of involvement in last month's attack on tourists in Pahalgam, which Islamabad denies. It says it's credible intelligence that India intends to launch military action, fueling prospects for war between the neighbors. In the meantime, thousands of people took to the streets in Karachi on Sunday in support of the Pakistani armed forces and escalating tensions with neighboring India. Demonstrators marched in the streets while waving Pakistani and Palestinian flags and chanting. Tensions erupted between the two nuclear-armed neighbors after 26 people were killed, many of them foreign tourists, in an attack that took place in the Indian-administered Kashmir province on April 22nd. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi warned that the Kashmir attackers would be pursued to the ends of the earth, while India closed its main border with Pakistan and suspended a visa exemption scheme and the landmark Indus Waters Treaty on water sharing. Pakistan says attempts to divert or stop water would be considered an act of war. Last week, the defense minister claimed military incursion by India was imminent, while Railway Minister Hanif Abbasi warned that its 130 nukes are not for show, but were aimed towards India. Prosecutors in Mexico have arrested the mayor of Tecutlan in western Jalisco state as part of their investigation into a nearby cartel training site. The mayor is suspected of colluding with the new generation Jalisco cartel, which he has denied. The investigation was launched after activists discovered bone fragments and hundreds of discarded shoes, backpacks, and items of clothing at the Izaguirre ranch outside the town in March. Rights groups say they fear the ranch has been used as an extermination camp where people were forcibly recruited and trained, and those who refused were tortured and killed. The discovery by people searching for their missing relatives of what appeared to be evidence of mass killings at the site shook the country, where cartel violence is rife. Here in Nigeria, VFS Global says it's opened new premium application centers for residents in the country traveling to the UK. Those centers are found in Enugu and in Port Harcourt of Rivers State. The Visa Application Center says it is to effectively cater to the growing outbound travel to the UK. VFS Global, as the residents in Nigeria can book appointments to submit their visa applications. The two centers are in addition to the state-of-the-art visa application centers in Abuja, in Ikeja, Lagos, in Victoria Island, Lagos also, which has been operational since November last year. The UK remains a popular destination for travelers across Africa, with Nigeria in the top 4 nationalities by volume for UK visit visas, accounting for 6% of the global total. VFS Global is a partner to UK Visas and Immigration, offering visa services in 142 countries worldwide. We go all the way to South Africa, where thousands of economic freedom fighters, party supporters rallied outside Kleinfontein, an Afrikaner-only settlement east of Pretoria, demanding its dismantling. The protesters, clad in red, marched to the settlement, calling for an end to racism. Kleinfontein was established in 1992. The settlement has faced criticism for its policies, which restrict settlement to Afrikaners exclusively. Critics, including members of the African National Congress, argue that such settlements contradict the principles of a unified post-apartheid South Africa.
Viva EFF, viva! Long live the EFF in social movement, long live! Long live the EFF in national...
Incidental that the Afrikaner is white, of European descent. President Zuma, when he was still the president, referred to us as the only white tribe of Africa. We believe we are a tribe of Africa. We believe we are Africans. We believe we belong here. We're people that came into existence on the soil of Africa. The folk of the Afrikaner came into existence on the soil of Africa. We are Africans. We are proud to be Africans, and we are proud to be here. Braai vleis, rugby, is part of our culture and our traditions. That's not race. And it's unfortunate that people refer to us only purely by race, and we believe that is cheap politics.
Jury selection for U.S. musician Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking trial has begun in New York. Inside the courtroom, potential jurors are being asked if they have any history with sexual assault or other trauma, and if they could be impartial in the trial. The high-profile trial has attracted a long line of media and other court watchers, hoping to get insight for jury selection, which is expected to wrap up in about a week. The hip-hop mogul faces charges of sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy, with allegations that he coerced women into prolonged sexual orgies, he called freak-offs. He has denied all of the charges against him and rejected a plea deal. Now, if found guilty, Combs could spend the rest of his life in prison. Opening statements are tentatively scheduled for May 12. Proceedings will begin in an estimated 8 to 10 weeks' time. Ahead of the Catholic Conclave meeting on May 7th, Catholics are sharing their expectations for the new Pope as the Vatican holds its last Mass before the secret voting of cardinals to choose the next pontiff. Worshippers attending the Mass at St. Peter's Basilica, led by Cardinal Dominic Mamberti, say they would like the new Pope to continue the work of Pope Francis. Another faithful says someone like Pope Francis, who has a closest to people, not only to the Romans, should be considered. Of the more than 260 popes in the Church's history, over 200 have been from Italy. Francis was the first from Argentina and the first from the Global South, with other candidates from the Global South also believed to be in the running this time. Cardinals will vote until a candidate secures a 2/3 majority. During each round of voting, ballots are placed in a furnace. Black smoke symbolizes a failed vote, while white means a new pope has been chosen. The papal conclave will be held at the Sistine Chapel from Wednesday, May 7.
We were looking for looking for a familiar voice, but that voice was missing. the voice of Pope Francis, and we were trying to hear it in the voices of the cardinals in the Mass also. Yeah, but the conclave will be coming. We are Filipinos, by the way, so we have our own favorites too, because
very obvious.
We would like the new Pope to continue the work that Pope Francis has been doing. For example, he has been doing a lot for migrants, for the people who are fleeing war and conflict in their countries and trying to find a better life.
Hoping for Cardinal Tagle to win. He was a favorite from the last conclave already.
Yeah.
So, and he's included in the favorites now. So, we're obviously rooting for him. And it's good to have a pope from the Asian country.
I think that's a good thing with having a new pope. It gives you like a renewed sense of hope. With the Catholic, traditional Catholic, practice.
Yeah.
Sometimes we tend to like go by the routine of attending Mass, as we go every Sunday. But I think this is kind of sparking a new hope and faith, and I hope it will continue to revive the strong faith in Catholicism and the humanity.
Well, finally, Vietnam's heart-long carnival, a delight to thousands of visitors in the city, showcased a vibrant parade and captivating performances, marking the start of another season of culture and tourism. This happened over the weekend from last week. A vibrant parade featured dozens of performers wearing intricate and colorful costumes, dancing, and also stunning fireworks displays. Visitors lauded the performances, highlighting the traditional cultural features of Vietnam. For many years, the carnival has evolved into a hallmark of Quang Ninh province, becoming an essential tradition in the coastal city. And let's hope we start the week colorful. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.